Welcome to the Best Damn Coach podcast. And you guys are going to be super stoked about this conversation because this is something I get as a coach all the time. And I like to say, I am not a lawyer, but I know one that can help you. So I'm so excited to have Christy Westerfeld join us today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm trying to honestly remember how I stumbled across you. I think do you even remember? Somebody introduced us,
It's
but
been
it's
a
been
long
5
time.
years, 6 years ago when I was first coming into coaching. And like most new coaches, I had a lot of legal questions. I just kind of jumped into coaching and my heart was going and I was serving. And then I was like, I guess there's like stuff I should do to like CYA here. And I was looking for someone that really understood the online world and what it meant to be a coach and how to cover myself and just make some smart decisions as I started to understand more about business. And that's where I had the honor of meeting you. So,
Yeah.
um, do you mind just kind of sharing with the audience, like, how'd you get to supporting coaches specifically as a lawyer?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I always say this area or this industry kind of found me. I was in corporate law, like in my mid 20s, doing the thing. And I really liked the law firm I worked for, but I kind of had the feeling that maybe many of you have had as well, where I sort of had like checked all of the boxes that I wanted to check and I had succeeded, on my list and was like, is this it? Like what, but
Yeah.
I don't feel as fulfilled as I thought. And at the time I was really into fitness and running and health and like meal prepping as I was going to court and stuff and like trying to fit, healthy living into my busy lifestyle. And so with that came the idea to offer health coaching. So while I was doing corporate law, I also became certified as a health coach. And so I was starting to work with people doing that. And it was really as I started networking with other coaches that people were like, hold on, you're a lawyer. Like, can you help me with my contracts? Like, can you? And I had just done all my own as a coach, And so I was like, of course. And then soon, my calendar was filled with people having legal questions, other coaches having legal questions. And I realized I'm really more passionate about this, like I really liked health and fitness for myself. And I liked working with other people, but I was so passionate about helping other coaches legally protect their health coaching businesses or life coaching or business coaching setups because it is something that can feel really confusing. And it was right around the time that my husband and I were thinking about starting a family and having kids. And it was a lifestyle that I understood why a lot of women wanted to have their own business and have their own schedule. And being able to play a small part in helping another woman have that, have their own business, have their control of their own schedule, be able to be present with their kids or travel or do whatever they want to do, was really, really cool. So that's really where I really found the passion and the desire to like be an attorney for coaches.
Amazing. I think that it's so interesting just how like when we set back sometimes things find us in business that we never expected and we take these little pivots if we're there to receive them and be open to them. And no doubt like what you're doing is such a need, because so many of us come into the industry wanting to serve and honestly going into it blindly. And I hesitate saying this, but just assuming that all people are good and will do the right thing. And, I've learned in business that that's not the case, unfortunately. And so we need people like you to educate us and not to change that belief. Like I do believe all people are good. It's just to wear the smarter hat and think like a CEO.
Yeah. I mean, I think legal, sometimes it's a heavy topic, right? There's a lot of people that are like, oh, like, I don't want to do that in my business yet because it feels heavy, or I don't, I'm nervous giving a contract to a prospective client, or what are they going to think of me, or whatever. But I really think too, in addition to making sure that your business is protected, it also can add a lot of credibility to your business. I mean, for me as a consumer, right? If I'm going to hire a coach or a consultant or something, that first impression of how they handle the onboarding makes a big difference, right? If you're paying someone a good amount of money and they come to you with a well-written contract that's very clear to understand, they're available to answer questions, they're not trying to hide anything, and then you pay the invoice and you feel very taken care of, you feel very comfortable. Because remember, a contract protects them too, right? It's
Yes.
obligating you as the coach just as much as it's obligating them. So it makes them feel comfortable in their investment. Versus if you go into a relationship with a coach or a consultant and there's either no contract or a contract that you can tell was kind of copy pasted, or we can all see that, right? Like the fonts are different, or that
Yeah,
you
so
can
true.
tell when someone has sort of
Guilty,
piecemealed
guilty at
something.
the beginning for sure.
Yeah, but people notice, right? Like, and so think about as a consumer, like which experience would I feel more comfortable with when I'm investing my money, right? Would I want a well-written contract that I know everyone's on the same page? It's not, scary or aggressive. It's just here's what everyone is agreeing to and we're putting it in writing.
Totally.
So I
So
think
let's
sometimes that helps a lot too.
I love the credibility, legitimacy piece because I think that's something that we overlook very easily. And when we're starting out specifically, what I hear the languaging often from the people I coach, because as we're going through and building, I obviously hit on the contracts, the protection piece, because I want my people well taken care of. I send them to you. But one of the things I hear is like, oh, it's just a baby business. Like, I'm just doing this coaching thing. And do I really need a contract? Um, because
Yes.
I think sometimes, yes, yes, okay, yes. I know you're going to say yes to this. But I think they have these things in their brain, like lawyers cost so much money. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. And even honestly, if it was thousands of dollars, which the way you've designed your business model is not that, it's totally accessible for coaches. It's like, that could be the one thing that literally saves everything that your personal, your personal assets. So could you just
Yeah.
speak to just understanding the ramifications of what not having just a simple contract in place could be, or why it's important?
Yeah, so I so agree. I think I encounter that a lot too, where people feel like they're not a real business yet, like
Yeah.
they feel like, well, legal to them is something, and if this is you listening, it's okay. We've all been there. You're not doing anything wrong, but you feel like, when I reach that level, I will do XYZ, right? Legal often falls onto that list of like when I, hit this amount of money or when I launch this business and once I start having clients. Um, but to be totally honest, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound so doomsday about it, but it can be your first client that ends up being the one that just totally like throws you and sues you and whatever. Like it doesn't, there's no rule that like it's not going to be until your 20th client where you're going to have a legal issue, right? Like it could be the first one, it could be the second one, it could be your first launch. There's no, just because you don't feel like it's a real business yet, or you don't feel like your business is off the ground yet, the laws don't really look at it that way, right? if
Well,
you're if you're a business, you're a business. Doesn't matter if you just sold your first $200 coaching package or you're a multimillionaire. The laws apply to everybody equally. And I think having a well written contract in place really helps in two ways. Number one, it helps make sure that everyone is on the same page up front. So often, what I see happen when there is an issue, you can trace it back to a miscommunication in the beginning, right? Like the client didn't understand something about the payment plan, or they didn't understand what the deliverables were, or they weren't sure, whatever. There was some sort of gray area miscommunication in the beginning, which led to the issue that they're now dealing with, right? And we can trace it back to, okay, but had we had a contract in the beginning that was clear and well written and outlined all of the client obligations and responsibilities, we might not be in that position, right? Like, let's say the client wants to drop off and they didn't understand that the payment plan was not a pay as you go, right? Like they're still obligated to make all the payments. They can't just drop off halfway and not finish the payment plan, right? That happens a lot. And so I think it's just a matter of making that transparency and clarity up front. And the contract is what that is, right? That's where you're outlining, it's the written offer to work together. It's where you're putting everything in, you're making sure everyone's on the same page. And then they move forward knowing, yes, this is what I want. So that's a huge way to prevent the issues happening down the road, right? Because we're eliminating that misunderstanding and confusion that can happen in the beginning. Another reason why it's so important is if there is an issue, right? What we're going to look back on is, okay, what was the communication that led to the problem, right? And if there's no contract, it's a mess. We're pulling up emails, we're pulling up texts, people are trying to screenshot Voxers. Like, I've been sent just a host of text formats from people trying to say, trying to prove their point of like the client agreed to this, blah, blah, blah. It's a mess. It takes so much time for you as the coach. It takes your time, right? That is valuable, that could be spent selling a program or working with your clients, right? If you have to spend all this time digging through your Voxers and your texts and your emails, trying to figure out where you and your client agreed to whatever services you're providing, it's a hot mess, right? And it's wasting everyone's time. And if you don't find it, then you're stuck saying, well, but she said she wanted to do this program. And it becomes a he said, she said, or she said, whatever, about what was the agreement, right? Now compare that experience with if everyone had just one contract, everyone signed it. You don't have to do any of that, right? You're not digging through emails or Voxers or texts trying to say where was the part that you agreed to this payment plan, or where was the part where we said this is what we're going to do. It's all laid out. Everyone's on the same page. No issue. So your future self will thank you 10 times over for doing the contract up front, right? Not only are we adding the credibility for our business and the legitimacy of that, but we're also making things way easier on your future self by eliminating those misunderstandings and miscommunications with clients, and by keeping it all in one spot where if there isn't a misunderstanding or there is a hiccup down the road, no one can deny they signed that contract, right? This is where we look. Okay, here's what we said. Let's resolve the issue. It's so easy.
Yeah. I've had situations where, relationships with clients were going really fantastic, and things do happen, right? Things happen. And sometimes there maybe, the relationship coaching just like doesn't feel aligned anymore. Or I've had clients have, big, huge life events, and collectively, they're like, I don't know if I can opt in for coaching, right? Well, the
Yeah,
problem with that is I have empathy, and I hold my caseload for a certain amount of people at a certain amount of time, right? And so there's times that while the contract is just so valuable, you go right back into the words and you're like, yes, and here's, here's what we spelled out. And so emotionally and energetically, it's we're putting it to the side. Like, we can just put emotions to the side, and we can say, here's what the contract said, and we'll make decisions off of that. And that is just so
totally.
lovely.
Saving yourself all of that stress is huge, right? Because exactly like you said, if a very smart thing to do and a way that you can be legally savvy is to write into the contract all of the potential ways it could go south, right? Like, have a termination provision is what it's called, right? But what are the ways in which either party can cancel this, right? Like, what if, exactly like you said, what if there's some sort of life event or something changes and they can't afford it, or they just, something horrible happens and they can't make the calls, they just need out. Life happens, right? Okay, so what are we going to do, right? And you can spell that all out beforehand.
Yeah.
When
Is
there's
there a
not
refund? Is there not a refund? Right. Like, that's a really
yeah,
important piece to the
and
puzzle.
you're deciding that when it's not a high pressure, high emotion situation, right? No one is anticipating wanting to get out of the contract, but we're talking about it in a very calm way of like, okay, let's say either of us need to get out of this. Like, how are we going to handle it? Everyone talks it through, or it's just written in the contract, whatever. Then fast forward to that high pressure situation where someone, has a life event, or there's something where they're like, I can't afford this, or, whatever. It's all written out. You don't have to try to negotiate in that high stress feeling, right? It's already done. There's no issue. There's no
Yeah.
stress.
Totally. I have a small question. I don't know why this popped into my brain, but I just want to hit on it. I think
Yeah.
this is important, especially for new people, to understand contract. Like, I've had many questions about, like, do I need an LLC and how does that protect me versus a contract and how that protects me? And for me, those things are wildly different, but I think for like a new person, sometimes all the jargon gets confusing. So could you just take like maybe a minute to talk about like why each of those things is separately important? And then
Yeah, great
also like
question.
insurance in there just as a caveat to this discussion, but that's for another.
Yes. So an LLC I'm just gonna do the whole thing. So if you know any of this, but LLC stands for limited liability company. And what that means is you are creating a business entity. You're creating a business that is separate and apart from you personally, right? So it's it's separate from your personal assets, which is the important piece, right? But it's separate
Mhm.
from you. So it's something else you are the owner of or you work for this entity. It's unrelated to you, right? Um, Lots of pros and cons, right? The pros are that if you do it right and the setup is correct and all the maintenance documents are filed and all that, the taxes are paid, you can eliminate that personal liability. You create what's called a personal liability shield. And that means that, let's say your business is sued or there's some sort of issue where your business is liable for something, your personal assets, which is just the stuff that you own personally, right? Your house, your car, your money in the
Money in
bank
your
that's not your
personal.
business.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah, I was going to say the money in the bank that's not
Yeah, your saving, your personal savings, right? None of that is involved in the business lawsuit or judgment or whatever, right? It's just your business assets that are involved. That can be important, right? If there's some sort of big judgment or there's some big liability on the part of you or your company, then you don't lose your house, let's say, like just to make it dramatic. It's limited to the business, right? So that's the LLC. If you do not have an LLC, by default, you're called a sole proprietor. And all that means is it's not a separate business entity. It's just that your business is an extension of you personally. The downside is obviously that there isn't that separation between your business and you personally. But that's not necessarily horrible. A lot of times people hear from other people, oh, I have to be an LLC, I have to be an LLC. You could, right? It could make sense for you to do that. But LLCs can also be expensive. Like in California, for example, there's an annual minimum tax fee of $800. So every year you must pay $800 even if you make no money, right? Just for being open, you must pay at least $800 to the state for taxes. It's also a little bit of an investment if you want to hire a lawyer to do file the articles for you and do all of that, which I think can be a smart investment to make sure you're doing it right, right? Because if it's not correct, you don't get any of the benefits. So to make sure it's filed correctly, you're in good standing with the state, to make sure that you can actually operate with that personal liability shield. So I do think an LLC is great and can be a very good tool to use. But just make sure you're ready for those annual tax fees and you can make that investment up front in order to set it up correctly. If not, the sole proprietor is okay. You can help sort of counter that risk or that personal liability with things like insurance, right? Professional liability, general liability insurance. So that if your business is sued, which is then an extension of you, right? The insurance takes over. And they pay out unless it's a claim that's excluded with them or whatever. Like they handle it, they take it over.
Mhm.
Um, so it really should be a personal choice. If you're going to be a sole proprietor, I would recommend making sure you have insurance. If you're an LLC, you can still have insurance, right? I always recommend, like, more protection is never a bad thing. It just looks different, right? Your LLC would have insurance. And if you are an LLC, sorry, this is longer than a minute discussion,
That's
but
okay.
if you are an LLC, the vital, vital, vital thing to make sure that you're doing is entering into all of your contracts as the LLC. You personally must be taken out of the equation. Otherwise, you negate that liability shield, right? You have to show the state, I am the LLC, right? You can't be willy nilly about entering into contracts as you personally, putting the money in your personal bank account. Like, it must be a brick wall between you personally and the LLC, right? All the business money goes into the business bank account, right? All of that, you can't commingle the money. You can't enter into contracts as you personally sometimes, the LLC sometimes. Like, it has to be very clear that it's just the LLC.
Yeah.
So
You're
that's sort of
confused by all of this. The tactical stuff we teach inside the BDC, the contract and lawyer stuff, Christy teaches inside her membership. And also you can buy, all the possible contracts that you're going to need. So just know if you're starting out, if this is feeling a little bit overwhelming, like totally get you. And it's just baby chunks. It's like one little chunk at a
one thing at a
time.
time.
And just know that the goal is to be separate from your business, and you can take those baby steps over time,
Mhm.
but sooner than later.
I think honestly, I'm not making any, specific recommendations, but I don't think it's a bad idea to start out as a sole proprietor. Like I did when I started my business, I had my malpractice insurance. I was a sole proprietor for the first year or two. And then when it made sense, I did created my two different business entities. But if it is overwhelming and you're like, oh my God, I have to do an LLC, I have to get insurance, I have to do all the contracts, like forget it, right? Like that's not where we want you to be. If it feels overwhelming, be a sole proprietor, get one client agreement, get liability insurance, and you're good, right? And then as you feel like, okay, I have a handle on that, then we can look at one other thing, right? We can do these things one at a time, just like Amanda said. It can be one step at a time.
Yeah, I love that. Can you speak to maybe like just one very like tangible thing? Like I don't know if we want to say the greatest mistake or the thing that you see most people struggle with if we haven't hit it on, or if they're going to take one action step, the one thing that absolutely should be in place for them. I mean, we have beginners all the way to earners, in the six-figure plus mark. So it's kind of a wide range, and that might look different. But what's like a tangible for them?
There's a few. I think number one, this is sort of a random thing, but make sure that your website has a privacy policy on it. So many people miss that, and it's legally required in order to make sure you're compliant with data privacy laws. Again, I know this is a little bit of like, what is she talking about? Data privacy is boring. But it can really, really, really impact you. The maximum fines for data privacy mess ups can be $2,500 per website visit without a privacy policy. So that can very quickly be a 6 or 7 figure penalty.
Okay. And that
Um,
can be found typically, just so everybody listening, in the footer section of your
It
website.
goes in the footer of your website and any other opt-in page where somebody can type something into your website. So a sales page, if you have like a landing page for a free resource or something and you're collecting emails, privacy policy goes in the footer of all of those pages. If you need one, you can run it and get it in my template shop, which is just coachlegally.com. I have a website compliance bundle, or you can just get the privacy policy. But that is a huge thing that a lot of people miss. And it's illegal and we don't know it, right? Because people aren't really thinking about data privacy and data collection early on. But the FTC is really starting to look at small businesses and compliance. And I don't want any of you to be targeted with that. So,
Yeah, good.
privacy policy on the website is a really important one. And then, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but the contract. The contract is everything. If you work with people one on one or in a small group or whatever, you have to have them sign the contract before they pay you, before the work starts. So the order has to go contract presented, right? You give them a contract, they sign it, then they pay you. That it has to go in that order for it to be legally correct. So contract first. If you are doing an online course or you're selling something directly from your website where it doesn't make sense to give people a contract, right? You're not going to email someone that bought your course at 2 a.m. your time. It just doesn't make sense, right? So we put on the sales page a document called terms of use. It's like a contract. It is a contract, but it's like your client agreement, right? But you put it on your sales page and they're going to have to check a box that says something like, by checking this box, I confirm that I have read and agree to the terms of use associated with this program. That box check will have to be mandatory before they can complete purchase for whatever digital product you're selling, right? A course, an ebook, literally anything. But make sure that privacy or that terms of use is on your sales page to have a contract between you and a digital product customer or client.
Oh, these are good. These are like fine details that I think we just overlook. We get so in the delivery, so in the coaching, right? And I think sometimes we just like, oh, I didn't know, but we need to know. We
Doesn't
need
matter.
to have
No,
these.
there's no didn't know excuse, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Um, and so I think those things, and you guys, you would be surprised. I've seen huge, huge names in our industry get this wrong, right? It's not just you that doesn't know this. If you're listening to this and being like, oh my God, I didn't know any of this, it's okay, right? It's
Because
okay.
I'm like, okay, I need to go back and look at every little detail now.
So
But
I
great.
always like, because I'm a nerd, like whenever I'm looking at somebody's sales page, and again, 6, 7, 8 figure coaches and people in our industry, I will look at they're selling some course, right? I look at their terms of use and it's either not correct or not there. Um, it's just something that a lot of people don't know. And you all now are going to be legally savvy, and you know, and you think, okay, if I'm working with people one to one, client agreement. If I'm selling something directly from my website, terms of use, pop it in there, and then I'm done. You can have your team do it, right? Or delegate it to your website person if you have a team or a contractor, a helper. And you're like, I don't know how to do anything with my website. That is also me. You can delegate it. Just grab the template and fill it out for the program, pop it in. It's stuff that takes honestly less than 20 minutes start to finish. And it
It
could
could save you
literally save your whole business.
yeah,
Huh?
yeah, exactly. Or it could save you, and it can save you thousands and thousands or your whole business.
Right. It could be a $400 20-minute thing, or you're paying a lawyer hourly fees to help you in a giant legal battle. Like,
Yeah.
we just don't even want to go there, you guys.
Oh,
It's
totally.
so it's so easy to do up front and just patch the hole, right? Put the band-aid on, get yourself protected, put the fence up, whatever analogy you like, and then you're done.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it. You go on to launch your course, your program, your product, and it's just a quick, every time you launch something new, edit your terms of use to reflect the new program, pop it in, just work it into your regular routine of launching a program or a course or an offering, right? Just add it to your to-do list of like, update contract to reflect new program.
And to
Done.
give you just a shout out, this is why I love the business model you have too, is because you can purchase her contracts like individually rather, or as a bundle. And once you purchase, it is lifetime use. You go in, she teaches you how to modify and reflect like what pieces to edit. And so that enables you and empowers you to just make that part of your systems and part of what's understood in the team. Anytime we have something we're offering, then this is what we do. And this is one of the first steps. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many nuggets on this episode. So I know you guys are going to probably taking frivolous notes right now, which we've included everything in our show notes. But Christy, will you also speak to, you kind of alluded to it, but will you talk more about how they can connect with you, your membership to just keep that ongoing legal support, your bundles, share us all that.
Yeah, of course. So everything can be found at coachlegally.com. That houses my template shop. Like Amanda said, I have template bundles for many areas of coaching, health coaching, business coaching. If you're a therapist offering coaching services, or you hold another professional license or degree, like a nurse or something else, and you want to also offer coaching, different bundles for each of those specialties. And then about 1 billion templates a la carte, right? So if you're doing a podcast, if you're doing a event, if you're doing a retreat, if you're doing, whatever else, or you just want one contract, right? You don't want the whole bundle. Everything is available there as well. You get lifetime access, you get lifetime of free updates. So if the laws change and I update the templates, you get free access to the updated template. So you don't have to like keep repurchasing when the laws change. And that is all at coachlegally.com. I also have a membership. If you want, in addition to, the opportunity to get templates, you want weekly calls. You want weekly calls with me where you want to ask questions, or, you're setting up your business and you want to continue to check in and ask. My membership is $97 a month, and it comes with weekly 1-hour calls with me on a Zoom where we're talking about anything you want. Monthly master classes that are on every subject from contracts, trademarks, hiring, anything that you can think of, it's in there. And a huge discount on all of the templates or trademarks or any other services like that. So I think it's a really good investment in your business and a way to just kind of continue to maintain that legal compliance with the calls and the discounts and the master classes.
Amazing. Thanks for being willing to share some of the behind the scenes nuggets that are so critical, because I think it's just important to. I always talk about designing with the end in mind and just knowing where you're going and putting in the self protection measures, and really adopting that CEO mindset and not downplaying what you're doing, but embodying it fully from the start. So I am so
Yes.
grateful that you came and shared all of that with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Awesome. Thank you.